got me right on. Yay, well, thanks for coming. This sounds really loud to me. Is it loud to you guys? No? Okay. So I'm here talking about solar boats, solar boating to Alaska. And
who are you?
thanks, Eric. This is a plant. This is Eric. He's my buddy. I'm Alex Borton, and been solar boating for many years. My dad is my co-presenter right here in ghost form, and he's been solar boating for a long time. So today, we're talking about this trip, and as far as we know, this is the first ever 100% solar trip through the Inside Passage. There have been some electric boats up there. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So this is what we're doing today. I get to play with a laser pointer. I want to hear a little bit about you, going to introduce myself, which is just an excuse to talk about another cool trip. A bit about our boat's history, about Wayward Sun itself, some technical stuff about solar boating, and then it's off to the trip itself. So I'd love to hear about who we have in the audience. Anyone been through the Inside Passage before? A couple of people, right on. Anyone done any electric boating? A couple of electric boating? No? Anybody want to go through the Inside Passage? Want to do electric boating? Sure, right on. And people who drive electric cars? Anyone in the back? Hybrid counts? Anyone have solar panels on their house? Oh, okay, nice. So cool thing about solar is solar works really well. So about us, there's my dad, and this is me. We both have our captain's licenses. I've been a certified sailing instructor for a number of years. I've taught in Baja, California. I've taught in the San Juans and up in British Columbia. My dad's been boating all his life. And I'm still a little bit nervous, so I might be tripping over my words. So let me know if you can't hear anything. Thank you. So I'd never done the Inside Passage before, never been to Alaska. This is a trip I did a few decades ago. This is Chilean Patagonia. The pictures are about the same. So this is kind of my background, was outdoor education, wilderness education, trip guiding. So we were on, this is a Sea Pearl 21, and we did this trip for about 2 weeks down in Chilean Patagonia, did about 150 miles camping on the beaches. Sometimes it looked like this. Notice the similarity to the geography in the Northwest. A lot of times it looked like that. Sometimes it looked like this. And we got down to another tidewater glacier in Patagonia. This one was 2 miles across, and we did a mountaineering trip for 2 weeks up on this glacier up to the Patagonia ice cap. But that's a whole nother story. This is not about this story. The whole reason really is to get this picture. We worked really hard for this picture for our mountaineering trip on an iceberg, sailing to the glacier, to the mountain. We were very proud of ourselves. It was cool. So never done the Inside Passage before, but wasn't afraid of it because I've been on this trip. So here's a story about my dad. He's been boating all his life, and he is kind of the guy who put together the solar stuff. He's the technical guy. I'm not super technical. I've learned a bunch on the way. This is what he did. He had a company that built solar collectors. This is a 300 square meters of mirror that focuses the sunlight up to a hot spot that either would make steam or heat oil to make steam. And in the 80s and 90s, this was more cost effective than photovoltaics. And so this is what he did kind of for most of his career. This is a house I grew up on. Was built in 1984. It's a passive solar house in upstate New York when it was below zero. With just the sunshine, this house would heat up to 80 degrees, just off the sunshine alone. Solar is so simple and it works so well. All this house had was different, was extra insulation and a bunch of windows on the south, and most of the heat was from the sunshine. First solar electric boat. This is a 20-foot aluminum Grumman canoe with a trolling motor and a couple panels on it. And this boat worked really well. And it's still in service on a lake in upstate New York. Worked so well, Dad wanted to make a bigger one. This boat was 2 old aluminum rowboats with the transoms cut off, riveted together, double the solar panels, double the boat. He called it Sirius Sun for the double star. We called it Double Trouble. But this thing was a pig. This thing did not work very well. It did not go through the water very well. Like the system worked, but the boat itself, not so great. This is on the Mohawk River in the Schoharie Creek. You can tell this here is the old aqueduct of the original Erie Canal that opened in 1825. So the mules would pull the barges right across this bridge. And the Erie Canal was a big deal in those times. So 2 solar boats down, one worked great, one didn't. The quest was to find a hull shape that worked. We found the lines of an old steam launch, and Dad built a shop and put this boat together. This boat worked fantastically, and it's still in service up on the lake. So that inspired even bigger, right? Go bigger, bigger, bigger. Oh, I've got a video. Forgot the video. This is the boat in action. It was on the lake. My dad doesn't pull in his fenders, doesn't bother to sand the drips out of the fiberglass, but his boats work really well. So in the quest to get even bigger, built a 40-foot boat of the same size. This was the original Solar Sal. Too big for the shop he had. Rented some space not rented, was donated space in a bus barn at a local school district, and built the boat there. The bus drivers called him Noah. Built with a lot of volunteer labor. This was a really cool community project. A lot of volunteers to build a 40-foot boat. Child labor was employed. This is my niece, and my son here in the front, and 2 nieces building this boat. Because it was part of a school, it was a really educational thing. So these were class students in this school that came up with the artwork for the back of the boat, and a lot of the students were involved in this project and helped in various ways. This is the boat itself underway, and little drone. This guy's drone, not on this clip, eventually crashed into the boat and sank. It was very sad. But not without taking this picture first.
What kind of motor? What kind of motor?
Yeah, that one had 2 Torqeedo 4-kilowatt outboards. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna play this clip. So my dad took this boat out on a 750 miles from Albany to Buffalo, out the Erie Canal and back. And we'll see if this works. No internet. All right, well, it's not gonna work then. So there was a news clip on that trip. It was the first cargo trip. He took that boat out, picked up a load of cardboard near Buffalo, brought it back to New York to be recycled. It took him a couple weeks. The truck would have gotten there in a couple hours. But there was no carbon footprint, cargo delivery. First one in the canal. The other reason why I wanted to show you this clip was it had the audio of the old song. And I will sing it for you now, but I've got a mule and her name is Sal, 50 miles on the Erie Canal. So we were the Solar Sal with the mule and the boat there. Solar Sal.
Looks like it's working.
Is it working? I don't have it here, and that's okay. You got to hear me sing. Right? This clip is also on our website, too. I've got some cards. We're solarsal.solar. Okay. So, whoops. Why won't I go here? Okay. So far, all the boats my dad built himself. This was our first professional boat. This is a 44-foot boat. Marine architect Dave Gare designed this. It was built by the Hudson River Maritime Museum. This was the first ever 100% solar boat that's Coast Guard inspected. So it's a passenger vessel to carry 30 passengers.
You had the boat show 2 years ago.
Not this one. This one's 44 feet. Wayward Sun, which is the boat we were on this trip, was in the boat show. We're getting there. So the Coast Guard had never heard of a solar boat before. They didn't have the regulations for solar boats. They had regulations for electric boats. And this one passed with flying colors. This is powered by a 10 kilowatt Torqeedo outboard. And it's got about 5.5 kilowatts of power on the roof. At the time, the Coast Guard didn't approve of lithium batteries. That's since changed, so this has got 32 8D batteries in it, lead acid. And this is giving lighthouse tours on the Hudson River. If you're ever near Kingston, New York, you can check out the boat. And here is the boat. This boat doesn't even have the possibility to plug into shore power. Can't do it. It's not wired that way. So it'll charge during the day and yeah. Okay. So far you may have noticed all those boats are East Coast. Out here I saw all the fun my dad was having in New York and wanted to introduce our solar boats to the West Coast. Didn't take me long to find Sam Devlin, who's been building amazing boats for a long time. Partnered with him to design this boat, Wayward Sun, and he also drew models of a 38-foot solar cruiser and a 44-foot solar cruiser, which haven't been built yet, but there are some pictures, and maybe someday we'll build some solar cruisers. That's on our fantasy wish list. So Wayward Sun was originally conceived as a lake boat. The idea, we were thinking Lake Washington, go out for picnics, cocktails, bunch of friends, family. This was the idea that we had. And we had this boat in the boat show in 2019. Nobody bought it. So I took it out cruising in the San Juans. And went out with the family. This is Jones Island. And this boat actually was a pretty awesome little cruiser. And I think it's a testament to Sam's design that Sam's lake boat could totally rock the inside passage. So really fun boat, great with the family. We did some camping on land and camping in the water. Lots of fun in the sun. So Wayward Sun, here's the technical part. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. I've got a few slides of technical stuff. So we've got 1,700 watts of solar on the roof. These are a flexible panel with sun power cells. We've got 21,000 watt hours in the battery. And torpedo system. And look at this, I had to copy it in here. Lithium, nickel, manganese, cobalt, oxide. I will never remember that again.
That's a 6 kilowatt, or what power is that on the motor?
The motor, it's a 4 kilowatt pod. So the motor is right there, water cooled. And okay. So this is the main thing that explains all of our solar boating. The speed versus power curve. So what we did to get this is went out, here's watts. So this is power to the motor, which is easy. You just read it right off the throttle. So you know exactly how much power is going to the motor. Knots here. So I went out and drove the boat at 300 watts, 600 watts, 1,000 watts, et cetera, and saw how fast the boat was going. Picked a day, no wind, no current, as much as possible. Did it a bunch of times. Each one of these data points is the average of several repetitions to get this. So this is how the boat performs in the water. It's kind of a measure of the efficiency of the hull. Every boat will have a curve that's like this. It's pretty hard with a gasoline or a diesel boat because you never know exactly how much power is going to the motor. You can't read that off. Incidentally, every car will have a curve like this. You know, it takes twice as much power to go 65 as it does to go 55. So kind of all vessels moving through a fluid medium will have a speed to power curve like this. So about Wayward Sun, 1,000 watts is 10 100-watt light bulbs. Anyone remember 100-watt light bulbs? They used to be a thing. It's about the amount of energy it takes to run a hairdryer. Our waffle iron would draw 1,000 watts. So for the amount of energy it takes to make waffle, that'll push Wayward Sun at 4.5 knots in ideal conditions, right? So from 4.5 knots to 5.5 knots, double the power. Right? Double the power again to 4,000 watts, you get to 6.5 knots. So for us, we say our cruising, you can see it's sort of the sweet spot in the curve is right here in between around 4.5, 5 knots. So speed versus power curve. So this is about the boat through the water. Now, putting this in with the solar panels, on a clear day, we'd get between 1,000 and 1,500 watts coming in off the sunshine. Now there's a big range because you all know like there's clear and there's hazy clear. You know, a clear day, there's a range here. So if we threw our batteries overboard, which we've never done, but if we did, we'd go 4.5, 5 knots on a sunny day without touching any batteries, straight off the sunshine. Now what about when it's cloudy? So we notice there's different kinds of overcast. Pretty much on our trip to Alaska, it was overcast most of the time. So we got familiar with all the nuances in overcast. But you know, it doesn't take very much power, 500 watts to go 3 knots. So even with overcast skies, the boat was still moving okay through the water.
Is that 24 hours, 12 hours, what?
Daylight.
No, but for the boat moving, so you stopped at night?
We stopped at night. We anchored out every night.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I mean is, sorry, how long were you running the boat for?
Great question. On this trip, we were underway, average like 8 to 10 hours a day. And I'm going to come back to that later. So solar boats, when it is daylight, it's infinite range. When you're here at the boat show, that was the question we got most of, was how far can you go? It's like, it's the wrong question. We just went 1,200 nautical miles here to Alaska. We could have kept going. As long as it's daylight, range is infinite. Right? So that's the sunshine. So here's what's in the batteries. So if we threw the solar panels overboard and we were just an electric boat, this is what we got. We've got 20,000 watt hours. So that's 10 hours at 2,000 watts. Remember, speed versus power curve, 5.5 knots, 55 miles in the batteries. Run the throttle at 1,000 watts, 4.5 knots, 20 hours of that, about 90 miles. And then if you really want to maximize, you can go 140 miles. So this is, we threw the solar panels overboard. Right? But we like them both. We're not throwing anything overboard. So, back to the speed versus power. Say we wanted to cruise up here, but there were some clouds. You draw the battery. You get half the power out of the solar, half the power out of the battery, and you can cruise your cruising speed at 5 knots for a long time. So while range is infinite, speed is variable. So what we did was we went kind of all day, every day, 8 to 10, sometimes 12 hours to Alaska. We did not stop. We did not charge our battery with shore power. So we basically had all the sunshine that was just hitting the panels. Average speed, 3.7 knots. That was from Bellingham to Glacier Bay. And that's using the sunshine as it comes in. Now, I don't know about you all. When I cruise, I like to stop and enjoy places. This was pandemic going through Canada. We weren't allowed to stop. We had to keep going. So like on the trips we did in the San Juans, we'd be underway for maybe 5 or 6 hours a day, sometimes less, or if you have a layover day. So say if you're going only underway half the day, then you use a whole day's worth of sunshine in half the day. So you can go a lot faster. And indeed, that's what I found cruising in the San Juans up here. We were cruising speed well over 5 knots, battery mostly topped off most of the time, and there. So solar boats, infinite range, speed variable depending on a lot of factors, both the sunshine and your itinerary and kind of what you want to accomplish.
Can I ask a question, Alex?
Yeah, please.
So, just assume for a moment that the moon stayed in the same place. You didn't have to deal with all the tides and the currents and all up the inside passage. I wonder what you think your average speed would have been. I mean, do you have any data on like, okay, when the tide's with us, we're going this, when the tide's against us, we're going that?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, how did the currents affect our average speed through the inside passage? I'd like to say that we were able to plan our whole route to be going with the currents at all times. We had the current book, and we really tried, and sometimes we nailed it, and a lot of the time we didn't. It was spring up there, so a lot of the channels are getting a lot of melt off, which pretty much canceled a lot of the flood tides that were predicted. So I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to say probably the same. Probably about the amount of time that we were going with the current was about the time that we ended up against it, even though we tried really hard to go with it. And that's a solid question. When we're going 3 to 5 knots, not a current makes a big deal. And so we were watching, every 1/10 of a knot on the speed on the knot meter the whole time, and just like, all right, if we get a little closer to shore, where are the back eddies? How are we going to go? We were pretty focused on that for the trip. So easy to run a solar boat. You don't have to be a physicist. You don't have to be like a wilderness guy. It's so easy. I don't know if you can see this, but here's the number. We know exactly how many watts are hitting the panels. We know exactly how much sunshine is coming in. We know exactly how many watts are going out of the boat. And so it's very easy to just go and to know what's going on. We have, it's the percent state of charge of the battery is here. Speedometers on the torpedo throttle and also on the chart plotter. So you kind of have three options running a solar boat. You can charge the battery while you're underway. And this is all how fast you go. You know exactly how much energy is coming in. Right? You go the speed of the sun, or in our case, the speed of the clouds, which is what we did most of the time. We ran off of cloud shine on our trip. Or you can use the battery to boost your speed. So we were making those kinds of decisions kind of all day, every day, depending on how far we had to go and what are the conditions and what's the sunshine and what's the weather forecast. So interesting thing here, you asked about currents. Right? So we're putting, in this picture, we're putting 2,200 watts to the motor. Our speed is 4.7 knots. Okay. Extra credit question, what's the current doing? We don't know, but we do. Right? So 4.7 knots, we go back to speed versus power. So we're putting 2,200 watts to the motor. In ideal conditions, we'd be going about 5.5 knots. But we were only going 4.7 knots. So we know we had almost a knot of current against us at that time. So pretty easy to tell what's going on there too.
Doesn't that just measure speed through the water? Your 4.7 or whatever that is?
It's GPS speed through the water. No, speed over land.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I did actually, the boat does have a little paddle wheel impeller, but could never get it to calibrate well for our speeds.
It's quite hard to keep the pedal working.
Yeah, hard to keep them clear. Yeah. Yeah.
GPS is not very easy.
Yeah, so we had GPS speed. I kind of tried really hard to get a speed through the water thing and then gave up, but we could infer that well enough with our speed versus power curve. All right. So I'm about ready to talk about the trip itself. Does anyone have any questions about the technical part of the boat?
I don't know if this counts, but did you have a refrigerator?
We had a Yeti cooler, kept blocks of ice, about a week and a half. And we did stop twice to resupply on ice on our way there.
Does the torpedo, can it switch still to a range mode for the bottom number? How many miles or knots of range at that speed?
Can the torpedo tell you what the range is?
To be able to.
Yes. And that's through a Bluetooth app on the phone, actually. So you can, there's probably a way to make the throttle do it. But on the fancy Torque Track app, you can just look and it'll tell you exactly how many miles you have left at that speed. Which is actually wrong because it doesn't take into account the sunshine that's coming in. So you know you have at least that many miles at that speed without any solar.
It's assuming just batteries. It's assuming just batteries.
Assuming just batteries, yeah. Because it goes off of what is the power going to the motor and not what's the power coming in. Yeah,
Is the power to the motor, is it a 48 volt system or what's the,
yeah, 48 volts. Great. Well, keep the questions coming.
You had more than the standard battery, so is it programmed for multiple batteries? You set the settings?
Yeah, you do a numeration, and it goes through and actually counts how many batteries you have, and it does the calculations from that. Okay. So here's the trip. Now we get to look at fun pictures of Alaska. Bellingham down here, and Inside Passage coming up. There's Cape Caution down here, Dixon Entrance up there, Ketchikan, Juneau's behind my dad's head, Glacier Bay is back here. So this is our trip. It took us 20 days to get into Alaska, into Ketchikan. And then we could actually relax and go onto land, being back in the States and all. But we didn't even know before this trip if we'd be able to get through for Canada. This was back in the pandemic. The border had been closed.
What year?
This was last year, 21.
What time of the year?
We left in May. So months before we left, we found out that they would let us pass through as long as we followed these rules. We had to take, we had to take the, what's that?
I did it in September. They changed the rules dramatically.
By September.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Were you able to go to shore and stop?
Couple of really good dinners on shore. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh, I'm envious. Yeah, we were not. We had to go only the most direct route. We weren't able to go through any of the nooks and crannies. We had to keep moving. They would let us anchor to sleep, couldn't go to shore. We could stop for essentials. We didn't have to refuel, but we did buy ice for the cooler a couple times with some milk and vegetables and cinnamon rolls when we could. But we couldn't even get off the boat. We had to have all that stuff delivered to the dock. They like barely would let us get off the boat to tie up. So we found out we could go. We had a lot of preparations to do, like build a dinghy. Dad taught me how to build boats, which was fun. Sam Devlin designed this dinghy to fit perfectly for Wayward Sun, and we got a kit and built this. The EP carry motor, invented by Joe right back there. And that worked wonderfully. And put the boat on the back. Looks very nice, just don't look too close. And off we went. Oh, had to glue on the names. And all right, so here we go. Our lake boat rigged out as a cruiser. Lots of propane, stove, pots, pans, food. Here's the igloo cooler right in there. Actually very comfortable for two of us for a couple months. My son came with us for the first day, brought along his friends. And here we go. This is a little video, if I can figure it out.
Gentlemen, you are about to take off on this adventure. What words before you go?
Wish us luck.
Right. All right, so in the words of Tony Wheeler, who created Lonely Planet, Tony Wheeler says, "Don't worry if your trip will work out or not. Just go." So we're going.
Have the best time of your life. Have such a good adventure.
Goodbye. There it goes. Take off.
There we go, we're off.
Strike a pose,
Yeah.
Gentlemen.
No, we just saw that. So our whole trip is, there's a blog that you can link to from our website. We've got the whole trip. There's lots of stories on there and pictures. Here's some highlights for the trip. This is moonrise, our first night at Susha, Ewing Cove, and our last time we set foot on land before we left. And then we headed off into Canada. So making hash browns outside of Nanaimo. and cleaning up dishes. I rigged up running water in the boat too. We have a little pump and a hose we threw overboard to get running water, which we actually gave up and just eventually just scooped up the dishpans. But it was a great idea.
Here's
Oh, it's a video. You can see my dad doing dishes.
He has a wonderful rinse technique.
So the rest of the video we don't need sound for, Nick.
Oh, it squeaks a little bit.
It's just.
But
So here's another little video crossing Strait of Georgia. There's a little wavy. But we ended up having just a couple really beautiful sunny days. And Strait of Georgia was one of them. Queen Charlotte Sound was another. We just had a spectacular day, which was nice. Here's Little Bull Passage of the Sketty Island. Seymour Narrows. I think this is a video too here. So this was more representative of the weather for most of our trip. Getting into Seymour Narrows there. Life on board looked a lot like this. I had a little Iridium Go satellite texty thing so we could stay in touch. We drank a lot of green tea, ate a lot of popcorn and dark chocolate. And it didn't take us too long before we figured out pacing. So we got our morning walks in every day, kept up with the push-ups and sit-ups to keep warm and keep going because it was a long time to be on a little boat. So we managed to get our steps in. We did not have heat other than the little cook stove, which we did turn on from time to time just to warm things up in there. Okay, we just saw that. Dad liked taking pictures of barges. This is north end of Discovery Passage, looking down Johnstone Strait. And this was, so we hadn't figured out the currents in Johnstone Strait, and we were cruising along, not much current, hugging the shore. Then we came around a point, we had less than a half mile to go, probably only a quarter mile into the little anchorage. This was West Thurlow Island. And then this happened. So this ended up being a little more than a 6-knot current coming at us. I know that because our top speed was 6.5 knots, and we were going about a quarter knot. I don't know if you saw that little whirlpool right there. That was pretty fun. Anyway, Johnstone Strait, West Thurlow Island, heading around the corner to Vera. Okay, right in there is the cove we're going. And from here to there it took about 25 minutes. Right on. So that's the end of the video there. A lot of whales. These are a couple humpbacks in Johnstone Strait. Telegraph Cove, north end of Vancouver Island, one of our stops for ice and cinnamon rolls. Very yummy. This is heading just north of there, heading out across. This is the south end of Queen Charlotte Strait. Another beautiful day. Saw some wildlife. This is Cape Caution. We ended up, I'm going to say, getting really lucky with the weather around Cape Caution. There were some swells, fetched to Japan, but it was really quite doable. Had some. We were so lucky. We had planned actually on stopping right before then, and then going the following day. But with conditions like that, we just kept going, and got in late, but we made it around. I like to row the little dinghy. This little guy followed us for like 20 minutes, just rowing around the cove. Don't know why. Maybe liked how we smelled. We stopped at Shearwater Marina right outside of Bella Bella for a little more ice and some water and burgers. Little Raven liked that too. Foggy day outside of Clemtu. Cleared up. So this one, I'm going to come in. There were quite a lot of times that the Dahl's porpoise followed us on the boat. And I imagine that's a pretty regular thing up there, but we loved seeing them. Anyway, yeah, this was like 10 minutes, and there were like half dozen times that they'd come hang out with us for a long time. But
Was the fog and heavy overcast worse than the overcast for the solar?
yeah. So when it was like actual fog, we were getting almost nothing on the solar panels. I think there would be several layers. So this was right before Dixon entrance, just south of Dundas Island. Crossing Dixon entrance again, very calm, swells. But again, we got lucky and celebrated by making waffles. Again, there's 4.5 knots right there, but worth the celebration. Tree Point in Alaska, and this is a little funny. How are we doing on time? We got some time. Could we have sound for this one? This is me being goofy. Hello, here I am in Alaska. I'm in Alaska and I am on land. Look, there's my feet. There they are. My feet are on land. What's the big deal? It's been 20 days. 20 days since my feet have set foot on land. And look, there's the boat way over there. There's the boat. And here I am on land. And look, I'm gonna walk around. I'm gonna go over there. And I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna go over there. And I get to walk places on land. Okay.
You mean you went ashore in Alaska before checking into customs?
On the app. There's an app for that. So that there's a lot of communication back and forth with that, but we did actually check in by phone through the app before, right as we were crossing Dixon entrance. Right on. So there are actually several more videos of me being goofy on land, but I will spare you.
That was very cute.
Yeah, 20 days was a long time. We were happy. Ketchikan. My mom flew in to meet us in Ketchikan and actually stayed at a little hotel for a couple nights. It was very nice. While we were there, of course, the panels charged up the batteries 100%. Hadn't happened in 20 days, but we'll take it. So a funny thing happened. My brother posted us on Reddit. I don't know if any of you guys know Reddit. I didn't know Reddit. It's this app, and the thing went viral, and we had people contacting us. So this wasn't the first time someone came in and said, "Hey, I like your boat. Do you want some halibut?" It actually happened more than once. We were offered halibut, which
And there's no, you can't plug this boat in either to charge it. It's just solar charging.
this one we can plug in. We didn't do it on this trip. I've only done it like twice in the whole boat's life. So another reason we went to Alaska, Thorn Bay, Alaska was the site of the world's largest logging camp in the 60s. And before my dad became an environmentalist, he was cutting down old growth in Alaska in college. So he hadn't been back since he was logging there in 1963. So we had a lovely visit in Thorn Bay, and the people at the little B&B we stayed at were also there for the logging heyday and got to hear lots of stories. And this is what Thorn Bay looked like in the 60s. All these trees, I think, have since been cut down and regrown. This was 1962. Dad always talked about how much food they made. You know, a bunch of college kids out in the woods all day, hauling around big cables, ate a lot of pancakes. And this is what Thorn Bay looks like now. This is where the logging camp was. And there's Wayward Sun right there. More wildlife. Wrangell Narrows. This is Petersburg. Hiked up a little hill. Boats parked right down in there.
Did you go through the Wrangell Narrows? That's so,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was fun.
did you time it with the tide?
We did. We did. The currents were really interesting. You know, there are some places that had really specific currents, and the current stations were really predictable. And then the farther away you got from current stations, the more guesswork there was. And tried really hard to guess it right and did not get it very often. But Wrangell Narrows, we did have good current info. This is north of Petersburg. Bunch of sea lions hanging out on buoy number 2. There they are. On the zoom lens. At sunset. This was like 11 o'clock at night. So there's a place. This was Sumdum Mountain with Sumdum Glacier on top of Sumdum Mountain. Not quite sure how it got that name, but we got a kick out of it. This was Taku Harbor, the site of an old cannery just south of Juneau. Looking up Taku Inlet at some of the big old mountains of Alaska. Made some friends. We actually met Clay in Thorn Bay and then hung up with them in Juneau. Here's downtown Juneau from their house. This was the sunniest day of the year. I think it was the first time the sun came out in Juneau all season. Everybody was so happy. It was 70 degrees, and they're like, it's so hot!
The further north you got, the more hours of sunlight you got.
Yeah,
You had far more than 12.
yeah, yep, yeah. So we planned this May and June right around the solstice. Here's a little tram in Juneau. My son flew up to catch the tram. Downtown Juneau. There we are. This is heading north. This is a Point Retreat. The other side of this ridge is Glacier Bay. We hung out here for a couple days waiting for a permit to come through for Glacier Bay, which did come. Yeah, cruising around. Okay, we're done. These guys walked by where we were anchored out. And Glacier Bay now, so many humpbacks. At one point, we counted a dozen spouts that we could see from the boat, just cruising up there. Sea otters everywhere. We knew we were getting close to the glacier with some seals hitching a ride on the icebergs. They were really blurry seals, too. Marjorie Glacier, the very north end of Glacier Bay. Again, we got lucky with the sunshine. The very next day, it was all sopped in. And here we are. And the whole trip really was about this photograph. I had this exact picture in mind before we left, and we actually got here. So here's the end of the slideshow sunset picture. The light came in. So next up for us, we've got 24-foot boat is in production. Right now as we speak, is hull number 1 is being outfitted. Hulls 2 and 3 are waiting, and these will be for sale very shortly. Wayward Sun is also for sale. Love the boat, want to use the money to keep innovating and building new boats. And that's the trip. Thanks for coming. Yeah, question?
Yeah, have you thought about catamaran hulls?
Have we thought about catamaran hulls? Yeah, that's a great question. You know, most of the other solar boats in the world are catamarans. They're not necessarily more efficient through the water. We've got a super efficient hull design. So wetted surface, you know, is about the same, a little more on a catamaran actually. The nice thing about a catamaran is there's more area for panels. But we like monohulls, so that's what we're doing. Yeah, Alex?
Powering the production 24-foot, what's going to be the motor?
The system. Yeah, that's going to be a Torqeedo system. So we're going to have 4 of the Torqeedo batteries and a 3 kilowatt outboard and 1,500 watts of solar on the roof.
3 kilowatts.
Yep. Yep. Right on. Well, yeah.
Understand you, since the boat was in the show, you added a little more solar and a little more batteries before?
We did. We did. We added about 300 more watts of solar, and we doubled the batteries before this trip. And it was nice having more batteries, like a couple times, but on the whole trip, most of the time our battery was around 30%. And that was because we were just using the sunshine as it came in. When we had a layover day, it would charge up. So it was a comfortable amount, but we could have done the trip with less battery. Yeah.
30% full battery, so if you had less batteries, wouldn't you have been like 0 or 10?
Yeah, it would have been, yeah, but we would have adjusted, you know. We would have ran those batteries at 30%. You know, because when we were going all day, every day, we were just using up the sunshine as it came in. So the batteries were a little bit of a buffer for that.
And were you trying to go half, like split around noon, so you were trying to maximize your solar, so you could go from 8 a.m. to 4 or something like that?
Ideally, again, we tried to figure out what the currents were doing. You know, one night we got underway at 1 in the morning to go with the currents. So it just sort of, you know, sometimes the currents stopped at, you know, noon or 2, and we had an afternoon.
So did you go, what was your whole range of batteries, 0 to 80, 100? What was your lowest and highest?
Lowest was around 13%. And that was the one day that we had 25 minutes at full throttle. We were at 19%, and then in half an hour dropped it down to 13% going full throttle. That was our lowest state of charge. But most of the time we were between 20 and 30% state of charge. And that was fine. It was plenty in the batteries when we needed it.
So what was your maximum?
Well, when we had 2 layover days in Ketchikan, they got full 100%. Yep. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I will be around if you have more questions.